Hello everybody, welcome back to my Twitter account and live streaming recordings of my novel Walking on Cinders. I feel a little bit rough today, I have to say, but I'm here and I'm going to read for you. Hopefully you enjoy this. This is chapter 27 of Walking on Cinders. It had taken a day or two for Jennifer to embrace real life once again. She was Miss Marmalade before everything had started to go wrong, and indeed her job had been to perform for the United Soldiers. Unintentionally she had forgotten her task, allowing herself to be pulled into the real horrors of war for almost a month. She had sided with soldiers who knew far more about combat than she did, a group she had not met only by chance, but on a night no different from her regular routine, except now she found herself beginning to plan her future with them. For surely, after the fighting was over, there would be no need for a forces sweetheart, and her job would be over. Several hours earlier, Major General Sir Adam Dutail had finally got his way and persuaded her that it would be a lovely surprise for the returning soldiers if she could perform for them that evening. Jennifer had accepted only after a little convincing, and now she was sitting in an office at the back of the hall, one which would become a makeshift dressing room, wondering how on earth she would prepare herself to return to the stage. For a little while she sat there, shifting nervously in the armchair and thinking uncertainly about what she could do without any real sound equipment, dancers or a director. She had not been sitting long when the door clinked open and Ewan Roberts marched in with a suspicious smile across his face. "Why so glum, sweetheart?" he teased, kissing her slowly and drawing one of the few remaining chairs to sit opposite her. "I don't know," she replied quite quickly, the hint of a smile beginning to spread across her face. "I guess I might be worried about this evening, just a little bit." The soldier shook his head and Jennifer looked at him confused. "That doesn't sound like the girl I met in that dressing room all those weeks ago. A fiery little minx she was, and she knew exactly what she was doing." The force's sweetheart blushed. Things had changed so much. "Well, I've got no equipment and no dancing chorus," she replied nervously. "I'm all on my own." Ewan clicked his fingers. He wasn't having any of it. The door opened and a very sheepish young soldier entered carrying a large metal case. He placed it down on the floor in front of Jennifer, who looked on with interest. "This," Ewan smiled, "is one of the first CD players ever produced. There were a batch of them built a very long time ago, and surprise, surprise, Major General Dutail had one in storage here. He hoards all kinds of bits and pieces." The young soldier was smiling, obviously extremely pleased with himself. "It works," Ewan continued simply, reaching down to embrace this beautiful lady. "Oh, and I thought you might want this too." Silently he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card. "Lily," Jennifer grinned. "Exactly," Ewan replied, already beginning to edge from the room. "Use it, sweetheart. Oh, and when you get a chance, go down to the bunkhouses. A pair of French twins have been singing there all morning, entertaining the soldiers. I think you might be able to make better use of them than they can." She nodded and mouthed a silent thank you, before Ewan disappeared from the room, followed closely by his comrade. For a long time Jennifer sat and looked at the old CD player, wondering if this really was her ticket to performing the very evening that she had been asked to. The one thing that she had been longing to do all along was perform, and it was the only thing that linked her to her past. She wondered whether her iTouch digital music device would work with an old piece of technology like this, and if it didn't, surely that would be the end of it. Or would Ewan be able to fix it? Find some way to combine old and new together to form a coherent bond? Jennifer smiled at the thought of her loving soldier being able to do such a thing, and then suddenly she was convinced. If she was ever going to make this work, there were things that she desperately needed. She needed performers, music, and practice, the latter of course being impossible without the other two. And so, to secure both music and performers, the force's sweetheart decided to call the number printed on the little card in her hand. "Hello?" A voice crackled on the other end of the phone. A million miles away it sounded. "Lily?" Jennifer asked quickly. "Oui," the voice replied. "It's Miss Marmalade." The tone of her conversation changed instantly. "Jennifer! My God, how are you?" Lily called excitedly down the phone. Even over this distance her voice made you smile. "I'm fine, but I need a favour." "Yes?" The singer thought for a moment. "Well," she began, "when we meet you on the beach, you offered your services to me at any time, and the Major General has convinced me to do a show for the soldiers to boost their morale. I haven't got any music or performers, and I thought you might be able to help." But it's okay if you're busy. I understand. Jennifer took a breath and tucked a strand of hair back behind her ear. The whole message was rushed and garbled. Lily would never be able to accept, and it was too short notice anyway. There was a silence at the other end. Only the crackling of a line could be heard across the distance. I will do it, the simple reply came, after what seemed like an eternity. But Jennifer went on to think of a million different reasons why the girl should not accept. No buts. I will bring some of the girls along to the barracks later this afternoon. We will be able to cross the border at the end of the expressway. Yes, I'll give him your name at the gate. Things are going to die down here soon. Almost all the men have seemed to return to base. There was another slight pause. Good. I will bring some music along too, and we can mix it with the stuff that you already have, and then we can rehearse as much as possible. Jennifer breathed a sigh of relief. That's great, she said. Oh, and Lily? Oui? Thanks. Several miles away, at the other end of the expressway, Lily leaned back on her office chair and smiled. See you later, Jennifer. And she hung up, leaving the Force's sweetheart to breathe a deep sigh of relief. Phase 2 of the plan was to find some music, but before she made her way to her own dorm room, Jennifer knew there was only one place she needed to stop along the way. By the time she arrived at the main bunkhouse, the soldiers had already been completely dispersed, leaving the twins, Belle and Renee, alone at the back of the room. They were singing some catchy French pop tune a cappella when Jennifer pushed open the door. At first they did not notice her, turning in surprise only when they had finished. Jennifer! They shouted in unison, running towards her. We have been singing for the soldiers! They were grinning like Cheshire cats as the Force's sweetheart flung her arms wide to embrace them. Yes, I know, she smiled, glad to see the twins so happy after all they had been through in the days before. Ewan suggested... She paused for a moment, considering if there was any harm in revealing her intentions straight away. He suggested that I come and see you, and see if you were interested in joining me as backing singers. It's for a concert that Dutail has roped me into doing tonight. The twins looked at each other, shell shock plastered across their faces. Oh, oui, Jennifer, they replied in chorus. That's if you really mean it, Renee added, flashing her eyelashes. Jennifer laughed. Of course I do. I think, Miss Marmalade, I deserve no less than up-and-coming young stars for my backing singers. The twins blushed, and again they embraced each other. The only trouble is, Jennifer said finally, we have no music. But hopefully Lily will bring something suitable with her dancing girls later this afternoon. Slowly the twins drew away and looked at each other. There was something mischievous about their grins. Oh, why don't you see if Ewan has anything? Belle suggested, trying to be serious. Jennifer looked confused. Well, she continued, managing to control her laughter this time. Well, we have been wondering to ourselves who this Ewan really is, ever since we saw you on that day back in the barn. Afterwards we were saying how his face is quite familiar. It was only today that we were singing the songs that we realised we had seen him on the television. He was in a show where they wanted to find a new star. Belle stopped mid-flow, but the Force's sweetheart was staring right through her, wondering if the story could really be true. It turned everything on its head. Jennifer had never thought, even for a moment, that Ewan Roberts might be a performer. But Belle Levette had been right, for when Jennifer and Lily and a chorus of dancing girls were rehearsing in the soldiers' lounge later that day, he sneaked in at the back of the room and tapped his foot and his hand against the bar in time with the music, and sometimes he sang along. She just had to inquire further. She even went as far as to hand him the water bottle she had been using as a microphone. With all these girls present, how could he resist? And boy, were they surprised when he sang the first verse of A Love Like You before being forced to reveal the true extent of his West End stardom. Jennifer was completely embarrassed. He was a seasoned performer, his face undoubtedly plastered on billboards all over London, and she hadn't even recognised him. She was forced to ask more of the twins too, finding out which show he had been auditioning for on the live television show that they had seen. And then when they saw that it was the story of the British singing sensation Matt Monro, Jennifer was amazed. Of course, Jennifer knew it almost immediately. Born 3, the musical had been causing waves in London right up until the start of the war. But Ewan hadn't got the part. She knew that much was true, and it was enough to give her an interesting idea. In the end, things were not so bad, for Lily's arrival instantly brought them under control. Not only had she a wide selection of music in various forms, much of which was to Jennifer's taste and meant she no longer needed her eye touch. But the bubbly young dancer had carefully picked out a series of extra costumes from which Jennifer, Belle and Renee could create their own outfits. By the early evening, rehearsals were going well. They had decided on a running order, and Lily had quickly drawn together a series of simple moves that would work nicely with the music. But with such a fast-paced rehearsal, a certain level of performance would be left down to improvisation, especially on Jennifer's part, as she would be required to interact with her audience. This she had only ever done once in London, with an audience she barely recognised. Here it was far more personal. Ewan Roberts was pacing backwards and forwards in the little room at the side of the stage. From here he could see the dancing girls were halfway through the opening number, a jazzy routine which he recognised from somewhere, but couldn't pinpoint exactly where. Lily had pulled out all the stops, gathering together a talented group of girls who knew all the moves. From the tall redhead with a figure to die for, who moved elegantly across the stage, to the small brunette with the streaking smile, these girls were all truly stunning. And at the back of the group, swaying in time with the music and looking far more beautiful than he had ever seen them before, Ewan could just make out the twins. Belle with her long legs and Renee, who seemed to know more about dancing than she had ever let on before. Both girls wore matching crop tops in a flowery pattern as they watched the others dancing before them. They shot an occasional smile in the direction of a longing soldier, enjoying themselves enormously. For a moment Ewan paused, leaning against the doorway, and considered how he too would soon be performing in front of such a large audience. His days on the stage in London seemed so long ago, and silently he wished that he didn't have to do it. He had told himself from the moment he had met her that Jennifer was the one who was destined to perform. When the last of the dancing girls had exited, Ewan Roberts ascended the steps and stood before the microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, as a hush fell across the audience. "I hope you're all enjoying yourselves, and I know you'll join me in thanking the talented performers here this evening. I would also like to pay thanks to Major General Sir Adam Dutale, who in the last weeks has stood strong and united against our common enemy. We will never forget those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. They wouldn't have made it this far, and for the world, I feel tonight we are with it. They wouldn't have missed this for the world, and I feel that tonight they are with us here." He paused for a moment and noticed that Dutale was sitting in the front row, his head bowed in respect. "Well, that's enough of me. We all know why we're here, and I'm both pleased and proud to introduce in her debut French performance, Miss Marmalade, the Force's sweetheart." And even before he finished speaking, the crowd erupted as Jennifer walked out to take her position centre stage, beaming at Ewan and mouthing a great big thank you. The evening went without a hitch. Miss Marmalade performed a full 40-minute set to a crowd who were begging for more. The set list featured a variety of her most popular modern tunes, songs from the musicals, and pieces that were timeless, such as the classic We'll Meet Again and the White Cliffs of Dover, updated to include new lyrics that reflected their current situation. Ewan sat in the side room at the bottom of the steps, and for the whole performance he fully enjoyed himself. He had never quite understood what it was like to be part of the audience, but now that he had experienced it, he liked it very much. So much, in fact, that he almost missed his last cue to introduce the finale. Realising that Miss Marmalade had left the stage, and that only meant one thing, he bolted up the steps and laughed to himself as he looked out upon the sea of faces. "And now," he smiled, speaking into the microphone for the very last time, "I would like to thank you for being such a wonderful audience, and introduce our finale." There was a loud burst of applause, whistles and cheers from the audience, and suddenly Ewan realised that nothing was happening. The stage was empty and Miss Marmalade was nowhere to be seen. And then it happened. He heard the opening bars of a piece of music that he had always loved, the song that he had sung for an audition many years ago. And suddenly Jennifer was walking towards him, 2 microphones in her hand. Ladies and gentlemen," she said sweetly, addressing the audience, "I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you a star who has performed in the West End of London and who is standing on this stage tonight." She paused for a moment, looking at Ewan, who stood frozen to the spot. "This," she continued, "is a song from Born Free, the Matt Monro musical. I picked it because I know it's one of his favourites and he has never had a chance to perform this part. But more than that, I picked it because I love him. There, she had said it, in front of all these people who loved not her, but her alter ego. The difference was, this time she really meant it. So I'd like to introduce you to, and I hope you will take this opportunity to sing with me, Corporal Ewan Roberts. This time the applause roared around the small hall like a tidal wave, and Ewan realised that he simply couldn't resist. After all, it might be the first and the last time that he had a chance to perform with the Force's sweetheart, an opportunity that, no matter what his true thoughts were, was far too good to miss. And it was as the introduction began again, and Jennifer started to sing, that he retrieved some of his old confidence which had been knocked out of him by the horrors of war. The first verse was shaky, to say the least, and he held on to his lover's hand for all he was worth. But by the time they reached the middle eight, and repeated the chorus again, it seemed almost as if he had forgotten he was in France at all. When they had finished, it was so well received that they were made to sing again. The soldiers at the French barracks stationed in this remote location next to the chained pews loved the Force's sweetheart dearly, and they had been through so much pain and so much trouble that this was their escape. A little light entertainment on an evening where they could forget the rest of the world, the horrors of war, and remember the good times with family, friends, and those who loved them. That was why this on-stage pairing worked so well, because it was built on a foundation of love, respect, and friendship. And that's chapter 25 of my novel, Walking on Cinders. Tomorrow we will return with chapter 28. So that was 27, sorry, my mistake. We'll return tomorrow with chapter 28. We will also be returning tomorrow with a character that you may remember from very early on in the book. Chapter 28 is going to be very, very exciting. So just you wait and see tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Hope you can join me then.